Welcome everybody to Tech Breakfast. Glad to see your little shiny little faces. Mr. Lux.
What's up? They need to mute their microphone.
Welcome everybody.
What's up, Tony?
Hey man. So we've got quite a full house today of some really cool stuff. Take it away, Barry.
Yeah, we've got Kurt here. Kurt Howell is already screen sharing one of two new interfaces. Kurt, take it away. I think you said you had 3 new products, if I'm not mistaken. You're muted, Kurt.
Your mic's out, Kurt.
Yeah, can you hear me now without the echo?
Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I got serious echo from you guys. Interesting. Oh, well, I'll just talk because I'm good at that. Can you guys see the Thunder Core interface?
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, my name is Kurt Howell, guys. I am with NTP Technologies. For those of you who don't know who that is, NTP is the parent company that makes the Avid Matrix and the Matrix Studio, the DatMan software, and the MOMS. And also we have our own line called DAD, Digital Audio, Denmark, and Penta, which are nearly identical right now, but they aren't the same. Okay, so let's go into the new series. This is pretty exciting. We showed these 2 new interfaces. We showed 2 of these interfaces at NAB, and the orders are in the hundreds already for just about every person doing Matrix or doing Atmos mixing. So let's just jump into it. This is a Thunderbolt-based interface, USB-C, Thunderbolt 3. 250 channels bidirectionally from 48 to 96K, 128 channels at 192. And for those of you who like to record at really high sample rates, 64 channels at 384, all connected through DatMan software. The Mac driver is faster because of how Windows does recombing. So you have a really low latency below a millisecond, 0.67 milliseconds at 96 kilohertz at 32-bit samples, which is just faster than most of the HGX cards that are out there. Well, all of them actually. And then the Windows driver is just a little slower, but it is compatible with Big Sur moving forward, M1 computers, and on Windows 10 forward moving. And it's really exciting stuff. So let's talk about what works on it. Anything that's got a Thunderbolt port. So Nuendo, Dolby Mastering Suite, Dolby Rendering, Dolby Theatrical, Pro Tools HD, Pro Tools Flex, Pro Tools. I've got to think of all the 3 new versions. You'll see. Ableton, Logic, Cubase, they all work with the USB Thunderbolt 3 interface. So Avid made a big announcement as we released this on Sunday at NAB. They released the 3 different versions. The one that really affects us the most, which actually surprised us, is called Flex 256. And Flex 256 gives you, on a Thunderbolt interface without cards, the ability to have 256 channels of I/O, depending on how you do it. And our interface, it happens to be called the Core 256. Go figure. So this is the half rack version, which is got people pretty excited. It's fun. So it's 256 channels bidirectionally up to 96K, ASIO and PCIe drivers for Thunderbolt guys. It has built-in MADI, 64 channels of MADI, and then 2 additional ports that you can put SFP or mini BNC MADI modules and get 192 channels for just an extra $500. So you could do 192 channels of MADI in this half rack. It also has 16 channels of light pipe because we could. Cost about $1 to add it, but there are some new companies coming out with light pipe interfaces, preamps that are kind of exciting. It has, here we go, 256 channels of Dante built in through our own core driver. It's not Brooklyn 1, 2, or 3. It's our own driver. And then 128 channels at 96K through IP core. Word clock is built in. SPQ is built in, and we actually doubled the channels in the filters. So you get 16 filters, 64 channels to do all your bass management, EQing of your Atmos speakers, whatever you need to do with SPQ. Promon is also built in. And then with that, we doubled the buses and the 64 channels of output. So you can do 512 internal buses and 64 channels of output. It has an internal router of 1024 by 1024, but that's actually a fib. And the only reason we say that, it's actually 4096 by 4096. But in this unit, because you don't have expansion cards, you can't really get up to that note. But having said that, it's pretty pretty powerful. And what people don't understand with our router, whether you're working in Matrix Studio, or any of our gear, if you're using AES3 or MADI, it's point to point. Channel 1 is channel 1, channel 2 is channel 2. Not true. With our router, you can route any channel to any point you want to. So you could take channel 1 of a MADI and send it to 64 on a different channel, 6 to 83, or whatever you want to do. You have the ability to really control your MADI and your AES3, even though we've all been trained that it's point to point and in streams of 64. So it's Avid Yukon compatible, means it works with all of the Avid interfaces. Like I said, M1 compatible. It's got a 12-volt DC external power supply just to save space. And it is a half rack. And it's perfect for doing Dolby rendering or adding more power to a Matrix or Matrix Studio, because it sees the DatMan software. You can literally add this to those and get all of this extra power. And we're selling and making a little rack mount that you can put a Mac Mini in, and it takes one rack space. And that'll be out a little later on the summer after NAMM. But the Core 256 is shipped Monday, and they're already sold out, but I have another shipment coming in 6 weeks. So it's doing very well.
Good
So
for you.
yes, thank you very much. So the next interface we showed is called the AX64, which is kind of the next evolution of the AX32, which before the Matrix, that was our flagship interface with the Digilink ports and everything. This, once again, does not have Digilink ports. This is all Thunderbolt based, and it is identical interface, 2 rack spaces, until you get down to right here. And this is where you have the slots like on a Matrix. You have 8 slots for 7 different expansion cards. And then we're going to have some new Burr Brown standard cards come out at the end of the summer that are much more affordable, but are still better than what we put in the Matrix Studio. It's the Burr Brown is what we use for all of our A to D and D to A conversion. It's amazing sounding. Our high-end interfaces are $1,900 for 8 tracks. It's expensive, but the Burr Brown standard will be $999, making this whole project, if you had a large format console and you wanted some really good converters in a Thunderbolt-based person, it gives you a lot of opportunity. What are the cards? The cards are 128 channels of Dante or AES67, a dual MADI SFP card where you can put 2 different streams in, whether it's SFP or mini BNC, a 3G embedded de-embedded card, 8 channels of AES in a single slot. We have a little dedicated cable that breaks it out to either DB25 Tascam or XLR. 8-line input, 8-line mic input, same card, you just pay a license to get the remote control of preamps that are amazing sounding. 8-line outputs and a dual SFP module, like I told you, that little slot that you can add extra streams, and then available soon will be an A to D and a D to A version of the Burr Brown standard. So where do we use these? Essentially, now that the M1s are out, all of the PCIe cards and a lot of the Thunderbolt PCIe interfaces won't work on the new stuff. So it will replace the PCIe card from RedNet or the Yamaha version, both made by Audinate. They haven't been available for about a year. If you have a card that has an RME card, this can replace both of those and actually give you a lot more power. Like I said, 256 channels available, lots of MADI capabilities at 48K. It works with any and all Dante devices because it's Dante compatible. So that to the Brooklyn module all the way up to what the Brooklyn, what's it called? The Brooklyn 3 module will be out this fall. It's already compatible with that because we do our own drivers. That's the good part. Now that Logic has gotten into the music for Atmos business, we are totally compatible with that, and I'll probably be showing that at NAMM in the booth that we posted. Very exciting for that. And plus, there's a lot of people who aren't using Pro Tools. Actually, there are. And I'm sorry, Logic and Cubase and all the various other Thunderbolt-based DAWs work perfectly with this. So what's a workflow? So a lot of you guys who have Matrix or you work at a studio that has a Matrix, you're running out of slots because you've put a bunch of Digilink cables in there. So if you need to do rendering, adding a Mac Mini and a Core 256 to do your rendering just really frees up the whole workflow. No spinning ball. The M1 computers are really, really fast. And then if you run out of expansion, you can add an AX64 to a Matrix because it's the same software, different cards, even though they're identical, they're just serialized because Avid charges 20% more. That's just how that is. Same exact cards, but they only work in our stuff. And then, or you could add a Core 256 to it and get all of that connectivity, all of that Dante capability, the SPQ built in, the Promon, the summing, everything built in, and add to the system that you have. So it's a really flexible situation, all using the same software. Obviously, the mom, if you can find one, they are back ordered about 160 units right now. Thank you, chip shortage, but they are coming out in about 6 weeks. We'll have a couple hundred more and then a couple hundred more and blah, blah, blah. This makes it really easy to do your remote control, and with the 4 buttons, 10 different buttons in 4 different banks, you can really customize this to do what you need to do. Pricing. Core 256 is $29.95 for 256 channels of Dante and all the Thunderbolt. And if you want the extra Matty, that's another $500. And then the AX64 is $49.95 with the 8 slots. And the Core 256 ships Monday, but it's sold out already, and then I'll have more in 6 weeks. And then Q3, which means August, is when we'll have the AX64 available. So
Nice.
About a year ago, we decided to just simplify the whole database thing instead of going between 2 websites, Penta and AEX. So we've set up digitalaudiosupport.com. This is where you can log in, set up an account. It's free. You have a knowledge base with the Q&A. You've got tons of videos on every interface, including Matrix stuff on how to set things up, download, contacts, just all kind of areas that you can really help understand how to really set up a complex scenario. And there's also artwork and images and stuff, and probably a picture of me in there somewhere. On the flip side, the DX32R, one of our earlier single rack space users, is discontinued. We just can't get the parts anymore. That's just the reality. But the new Core 256 and even on the Penta, the 721S, is really kind of replacing it anyway. So it was at a good price. We moved them. We sold quite a few last fall, but they are gone. So sorry. Oh, future products. Oh my gosh. Secrets. Can't tell anything. All of you are signing. Can't tell anybody. And I can't show you any more than that. It is called the AX Center. It will be out in the fall. It's going to be a game changer, guys. I'm being very secretive here because I have to be, but it has a lot of stuff on it. That's about all I can tell you.
Go back.
Yeah.
Come on, let me see that slide again.
Yeah. I know how that goes. Yeah. It's one of the things, the common questions I get was, does this mean I don't need HDX cards anymore? The answer is workflow. So if you are working in the post world, and let me go ahead and I guess I can close this, stop sharing. There we go.
There you go.
So if you're working in the post world and you need to have sample edge accuracy using an HD sync or a sync X, you have to have HD cards because of that serial port that's proprietary to Avid. So if you're working in post for Atmos, yes, you have to have HDX cards. If you are doing music for Atmos, you do not. That's where our interfaces are built for. So I could literally start taking advantage of that $750 Apple's giving for every master mix you turn into an Atmos mix for music, and really have an extra nice source of income. And you don't need the expensive HDX connectivity. With our AX64, if you have a large format console, you can go that route. If you just need, if you have other Dante interfaces that you're doing your conversion with, you can use the Core 256. And in the fall, when the 3rd interface comes out, you'll see that that's a nice option too, that will do a lot of things for a lot of people. Hi, Gary. The Core 256 would be great for Gary for what you're doing, unless you are doing post editing and syncing to film. That's the fine line. And we got a lot of grief from Avid when we released this. They've known about this project for 2 years. We've shown them beta, alphas, versions without cards in them, and they're, oh, that's great. And then we released it, man, my phone lit up. But that's just life. It's a great interface. It's affordable, amazing conversion, massively powerful. If you have an M1, the M1 Studio is just unbelievably fast. And that's it for me, guys. I did that pretty quick.
So basically you're saying if you buy an M1 Studio,
yep.
If you buy, an M1 Studio, which is a half rack basically, and then you buy the other DAD, which is a half rack.
So the M1 Studio is about 4 inches tall. So it's a little taller, but the Mac Mini M1s, they're smaller. So that would both fit in the rack that we're going to sell for a couple $100. Yeah. And then you're rocking. Now you got to get analog or digital out to whatever speaker format. If you're a digital guy, then you've got MADI. You can go to a digital, to a different interface, or you have light pipe, which I don't think there's many light pipe speaker things. But if you're needing this to be your only interface to get the speakers, you're probably going to want to go to the AX64 route so that you can put some D to A cards in there.
Yeah.
May I?
Yes.
I understood that the DAR only operated on PC. Are you saying that on the Mac Mini you're running parallels or something with DAR on it?
What is DAR?
The Dolby Atmos renderer.
Adobe Atmos Render. So yeah, you can't kind of do those on the same machine. You kind of have to do one. You can, but it really limits to how many channels you can do. The Dolby Atmos rendering, the way that we've set it up and the way that Dolby helped us design it, is to be on a separate machine that you route to the Dolby renderer, and you route 128 channels or 256 channels at 48K, and you bring it back 16 channels to your audio card and send it out. You do that all through Dante.
Exactly. So you can also do it through MADI.
Well, yeah, and that's why we have the 3 streams of MADI. So if you want to bring it back, you're bringing back 16 channels probably, so you might just want to bring it back through MADI is how a lot of people.
I'm sorry if I'm confusing the issue. I'm going MADI out to a DAR, and that's the last piece of the component where I was going to invite you all over this month to see the Atmos setup, but I don't have the DAR yet. And I'm just checking to see if I have 128 channels out MADI. If I would go into your box, out of the MADI IO into your box, and then were you suggesting that the M1 Mac Mini could do the Dolby rendering?
Oh yeah, dude. You can see my systems. And my Mini is right next to me. Yeah.
So, are you running it on Parallels, or are you running it in a Mac format?
I'm running my Pro Tools on a laptop that's not an M1 into my Core 256. Then I'm going to my Mac Mini, which has another core connected. So I have 2 computers doing the handshake between each other. Yeah. Okay. And that's the best way to do it. And Gil will be at our booth showing how you can do it on one machine. It's just you're limited on how many tracks you can bring back, and you'll have some spinning ball. So it's just best, even with the fast. I mean, if you had Gil has a Mac Studio doing his main system, and then a Mac Mini doing the rendering. And he says that his Mac Studio with Photoshop open and every other application open works at about 11%. It's just so powerful. So the new computers it's really come around. It's the time we've all talked about our whole life of someday I'm not going to need these cards. Well, if you don't need to be syncing with the Sync X or Sync HD, Sync HDIO, the Sync X, and you don't need the post syncing, then the time is now. I don't think that will ever go away because just how accurate you have to be when you're syncing to post for post mixing and everything. But the 2 work perfectly together. And as I said, you can mix and match our products with the Matrix and the Matrix Studio to get more track count, or get more Dante, or to get more MADI or SPQ, etc.
Can I ask another question then on the new IOs are, I believe, and I hope it's okay that I disclose this, when we discussed last year that there was some where 2 chips were being stacked, 2 24-bit chips were being stacked in order to have 16 and 16 and achieve 32-bit. Are we on these new units achieving 32-bit on the IO?
The stacking of the chips adds noise to your floor level is the problem with that. And so you get this sample signal to noise ratio of 128, but then you have to take away about 6 dBs because they're stacking and the noise level adds. So if I'm in Logic, I'm working at 32-bit or 64-bit, rocking into my interfaces and getting it. But right now, Pro Tools is basically still, as I understand it, still 24-bit in what I'm seeing. It doesn't mean you can't go to 32-bit because you can. everybody I know in the post world is just working at 24-bit just because.
Yeah, Kurt, the question I was asking was whether or not the new DAD interface is like analog to digital going 32-bit, or is it still in 24-bit realm?
Still on 24-bit. Nothing changed in our cards. Yeah, nothing. The cards are exactly the same. And though they're 7 years old, literally what's in the matrix and what we had in our DX32, they're still the best sounding, in my opinion, cards out there. And I'm not a guru for an audiophile guy, but the people that I do respect say that, so I kind of defer to them.
Terrific. Thank you, Kurt.
Sure, man. Nice to see you.
It's nice to see you. I'll see you at NAMM.
Yeah, cool.
Kurt, one question. The cards that go in the back of the AX32 or 64.
Yeah, the 64.
Is it eight channels analog and one card for an inputs and 8-channel analog for outputs? Okay, so
yes, to achieve the signal to noise ratio of 136 dBs to 1, you can't combine, and maybe that goes toward Bodeker's question, is that you start combining and you start picking up noise. So to keep things, the thing I learned when I started with this company is the word compromise is not in their vocabulary. It's like they over-engineer is exactly what I hear all the time. And they would rather charge you $500 more to give you the best signal to noise ratio and sound quality that you possibly can get than compromise and give a cheaper version. Now, when they found out that there was a Burr Brown standard that was available and they spec'd it out, they were shocked at how great it even is in their opinion. And I just repeat, the number one converter is the DAD full, and then the DAD standard is the number 2. But people have opinions on conversion, and that just goes on and on and on. And everything sounds better than our old blue 192s. So I'm dating myself here. More question, guys?
awesome, Kurt.
Cool.
I think that's it.
Good stuff.
Thanks,
dude.
everybody. So, okay, somebody wanted to do a 16-channel analog system.
Uh-huh.
A recording studio. They want to record a band.
Mm-hmm.
What would that be?
So if in the new Thunderbolt or using HDX?
HDX. Also, I had another question. There's no way to combine HDX, the DigiMini, DigiLink cable. There's no way to, because you don't have those connectors anymore on the bottom.
For us to get the compatibility and to build interfaces for them, we had to give up our DigiLink. Okay. But they gave us Yukon capability. So all of the S6, S4, S1, all those work with all of our interfaces, and everything uses the same software. So you literally can mix and match our stuff with Matrix and Matrix Studio at a lesser price and build. So if you were to take, I'll give you an example. If you were to load an AX64 with A to D and D to A, you could do 32 channels of A to D and D to A, which you can't do in the Matrix. You can only do 6 cards. You can't do 8. And our cards, if you maxed it out, would be about 19,000, whereas the Matrix maxed out is about 26,000. So it's a pretty big swing. When the new Burr Brown standard comes out, you're going to be able to take the $4,900 chassis and put 32 by 32 for $9,000. You're going to have a very, very nice system for under $10,000, which is pretty affordable for that kind of sound quality.
Great.
And then the third interface will kind of make people happy too. I call it the Apollo killer because it's Thunderbolt based and phenomenal converters and expansion. And that's about all I can tell.
Awesome. Okay. Last question. You had a Penta. What is Penta briefly?
Penta is identical to DAD, but okay. Penta was around a lot longer and is huge in Europe. So it's just more industrial strength. It has a hot swappable base, so I can fold the front cover down and pop cards in and out without turning it off. So if you're a broadcast facility, that's what it's made for. Dual power supplies. It's really loud. It's meant to be in a machine room, but it uses all the exact same cards.
Got it. Yeah. Okay. Tony, questions? Everyone good?
Oh, I'm great. I've known about this. Kurt and I've been talking about this for months, and we've just been waiting for him to be able to reveal it to everybody. We wanted to have him in, I think, in January, but because NAMM got pushed,
Yeah.
we had to push it back. So we've been sitting on this for quite a while, and it's exciting because if you don't really need an HDX card, you just saved yourself a ton of money.
Yeah.
So,
It depends on what your workflow is. If you're doing music for Atmos, which most of the studios being built in Nashville and in Miami and New York are taking advantage of this Apple money, and they're taking masters, stem mixing them and making them into Atmos mixes. They're not syncing to a Sync X or an old Sync HD, and it's the perfect workflow for that for a lot less money.
and most of our music guys are not syncing.
Yeah.
That stuff. So
Yeah. So and because Dante's PPP protocol for cleaning up it's so amazing. You don't need an external word clock you don't need an atomic bomb or all the various the brain streams and stuff. I mean, those are great if you're doing syncing over long distance where you're using Wi-Fi to connect your sync clock and satellites and stuff. But the PPP protocol inside of Dante is actually really good for cleaning up clock.
awesome. Thanks, Kurt. We've been trying to get him on for it's been 5-6 months.
Yeah.
So we're really glad you were able to present that to everybody.
Thanks, guys. Come see us at NAMM.
All
Yeah.
right, Kurt. Thanks again. And
So
we're going to move on to Andrew here. Andrew Scheps. I saw you. How are you?
I'm good. It's great to see a lot of you. I don't know all of you, but I know quite a few, and it's been forever. So
are you still in the UK?
I am in Worcestershire.
Oh,
yes.
As Americans say.
I have some of your sauce in the cabinet.
Yes, exactly. It's made not that far from here. You can smell it if the wind is right.
So Andrew's here to talk about Bounce Factory, and this is pretty amazing stuff. I've past few days, I've been trying to teach myself SoundFlow, and I've resigned to the fact that I'm going to get out and dust off my old JavaScripting chops and just write these things directly. And that's probably what you're doing, because your Bounce Factory has some pretty gnarly macros going on there, pretty deep, lots of I forget the nomenclature right now, but anyway, complicated. So for the SoundFlow is a macro editor. So you're able to create and make macros. One button push can do so many things in a row that it becomes very, very handy for Pro Tools. I already want to get deeper into it to do some certain stuff. So anyway, Andrew, take it away. Tell us about Bounce Factory.
Yeah, I mean, SoundFlow is the platform that Bounce Factory is built on, and as you say, it's an automation software thing that has really deep hooks into Pro Tools, so it can do stuff inside of Pro Tools that a lot of the other ones can't. So that's good, and you can program it on a macro level, which is kind of drag and drop and things like that. But then, as you mentioned briefly, you can turn a macro into JavaScript, and then you can go nuts. And 2 years ago, I had no idea what JavaScript was, and now I know way too much about it. And so I don't know if any of you have seen anything about Bounce Factory, because I don't, like, there are videos online that kind of walk you through in detail what it does. So I could just do a really brief overview and then do questions, if that makes more sense, rather than like a full walkthrough. But basically, what it's built for is bouncing mixes and bouncing versions of mixes, because I hate doing that. You finish a mix and there's the euphoria of getting it signed off, and then you're sitting there for, now in Atmos world, sitting there for hours and hours printing versions. So you get your 5 or 6 mixed versions, then you got your 20 stems. And if you're working with analog gear, which I'm not, but my stuff still doesn't bounce that much faster than real time. That can take a huge amount of time. So when I first got into SoundFlow, I started automating my own process, and it was really specific to the way I worked. And then I started generalizing it, and it just got good and started working, and I passed it on to a few other people who were testing it. And then it turned into this. So I'll give you the really brief overview. I'm going to be skipping things, and then I think questions will help sort of illuminate it. And then there are videos that walk you through kind of everything to do with it. What the core idea is it takes a snapshot of your session. So when you've got a session open, you click take snapshot. It's telling me I haven't selected part of the timeline to bounce, which is a nice little heads up. It brings you to what looks like the bounce window in Pro Tools, but there are more options than you get in Pro Tools. But basically, this part of the bounce window is exactly what you're used to, though you get some extra color coding to show you like you are bouncing at the sample rate of the session. And if you're bouncing at the sample rate of the session, but you're not importing it, you get a little color code to say, hey, you could import it if you wanted. And then some of the additional functionality is if you're importing it, you can also export a copy. And now this is that export clips as files dialog. So within the process of bouncing the mix, like I always bounce my mixes back into the session at whatever the sample rate is, and then 24-bit while I'm working, and then the 32 for mastering. But I'm always exporting a 4416 for the client to listen to. So now this is part of the bounce process, take a 4416 and export it to a different directory after the fact. I also like to put my mixes on a print track at the bottom of my session. So I can say, instead of bringing it into the clip list or to a new track, I can actually bring it into an existing track. And what it'll do is after you bounce the mix, it'll make a playlist on this track called whatever your mix is, and it'll put it on that track. So that's like one mix pass within the session. And then down here, you just build up a list of all the other mix passes you want to do. So I'm going to kind of blast through this, and I apologize if I lose people, but I figure better to have time for questions than me just to go into the details. But basically, you can select tracks in your session and say, now I want to do another mix pass with those selected tracks soloed, for instance. So I've just selected my vocal VCAs, and if I solo those, that's going to be my acapella, right? And then if I mute those tracks, that's going to be my instrumental. So I'm just going to make another pass with those muted and call it instrumental. And then I'm going to have just the lead one muted, and that's going to be my TV mix, right? And then we can say, all right, but now I got to print some stems, and I want to print, because I'm sending it off to someone to do Atmos, or I'm going to do the Atmos of it, and I want all of my guitar tracks separate. So I can now add a batch by selecting a bunch of tracks here and say, I want to, and this is going to all look a little like there's a lot going on, but basically what it's doing is it's saying, how do you want to name your stems? And there's going to be a base name, which is taken from the mix, which that's fine. And then a little separator, and then the word stem or whatever you want to do. And you can see here, it might be a little bit small, that there's like the example text of what the first stem is going to be called. And then you can actually look at all your tracks. So these are the tracks in the Pro Tools session. And then you can clean up the ends of them. Because like, I mean, every track by the end of a mix or production has .01 or dupe 06 and .cm at the end of it. And I got really, really sick of having to manually go in and clean those up. So I just put a button in that strips all those off. And you say done, and you say add. And then what you've got is I've just added 13 mix passes, and it's going to go through and print a mix pass through my stereo bus chain with each of these tracks soloed individually. So I can have multiple tracks muted for a pass, multiple tracks soloed for a pass, or I can select an entire group of tracks and say, do a pass for each one of those. And all of the naming is based off of this. They will all share the information that's in this bounce dialog. So every mix pass is going to be at 4824. It's going to be that source. It will make a playlist for every single one of these mix passes and pop it onto a thing. And if you put them on new tracks, this is where the endless development happen. If you put them on a new track, most people have their tracks defaulting to their mix bus. So if they make a track while they're mixing, it's actually going to the mix instead of like you print the mix and it's not there. So the app is smart enough that if you're putting mix passes on new tracks, it sets them to no output before it bounces the next pass. And so you can do all this. And then if you're working off of a template, like I had my VCAs here for my vocals, those are in every single session I ever print. You can actually export and import sets of mix passes. So you can say, look, man, my TV, instrumental, and acapella are going to be the same for every single mix that I print forever. It's going to be the same source, the same stuff muted, the same stuff soloed. So you can just export those. And when you set up your snapshot for the next song, just import them. It makes sure that those sources are available and those tracks exist in the session, and you're done. And then all you got to do is rename it. So let's say I've already printed these and I just brought them in and I want to rename because now it's R4 or something like that. You can say search for R3 and rename it to R4. And now all those mix passes are renamed. And you can go back into your stems and change those to R4. And that's how fast I would set up the next song. You don't have to go through the process of selecting the tracks and all of that. So if things are consistent in the way you work, it's really, really fast. Then when you hit proceed, and now Zoom is probably going to mess me up because I got little windows all over the place. Now what it's doing is it's gathering every single bit of information about the session that there is. It will know all of the insert assignments, all the send assignments, what plugins are active, what their settings are, what the volumes are, what everything is panned to, basically everything except for the audio edits that are on the timeline. Then when you're bouncing, you can decide how much of that data do you want to recall as you bounce. So when you bounce your snapshot, it always starts off with the saved session. That session will open up and it will be exactly as you left it. But then you can say, if you look here, I want to actually recall some stuff. So let's say you're doing a version without the limiter because your mastering guy doesn't want the limiter. You can bypass the limiter, take a snapshot, and just tell it, when you bounce these mix passes, recall the insert settings. And that way you don't have to save a new session. So it will do one set of mix passes within the session with that limiter bypassed, and then another set with the limiter on. However you want to do it. If you're doing a vocal up, you can do it just by changing the volume, take a new snapshot. You don't have to save session as. You can also have mix passes that will just switch playlists. So if you need to do clean versions, you can do those within the snapshot. You don't have to save a new session or even do a second snapshot. You can just say, on these tracks, switch to the clean playlist and print me an instrumental, not an instrumental, but an a cappella or vocal up or whatever it is. And you can set up as many sessions as you want, and it will open and close sessions. So I generally work on an album all at once. I don't tend to do one song at a time. So when I get stuff signed off, I've got, let's say, 12 songs and 30 passes each. And that's a hell of a lot of mix passes. So I will set them all up. It'll take, I don't know, maybe half an hour because most of my stuff is templated and I've exported sets of mix passes. It's just the stems that really change song to song. Set them all up. And when I go to bed, I hit bounce all and it opens and closes sessions. And if it's not done in the morning, you just cancel whichever bounce it's in the middle of, and it will mark all the ones that it finished as bounced, which are really easy to clear out of the list. And then when you go to lunch, you hit bounce all again, it picks up where it left off. You get back from lunch, you cancel. So you can save these, and then you can also export all of this snapshot information and save it with a session. So if they come back to you 4 months from now and say, well, that's all great, but can you turn the hi-hat up and re-deliver it to mastering? You don't have to set anything up. Just turn the hi-hat up, make sure you're not recalling volume from the old snapshot, and print all your mixes again. So it just does, it's basically like someone walks in when your mix is approved and says, what do you want me to do? Go home or go to the bar or go bowling or do whatever you want to do. And this thing sits here and bounces because it was driving me crazy doing it myself. So I think that's all I'll say. And if I blasted through too fast and you need me to back up and drill down on stuff, absolutely, you know, that's why I'm here.
Awesome. I didn't realize it was that deep. Yeah, it's really something. Thanks so much for blasting through it.
Yeah, wow. It's and the features just keep coming because people use it and they want to do stuff. And you think like, well, actually, that would save me a lot of time. And so you go and make it do it.
Yeah.
How long did it take you to come up with this, dude?
I've been working on it for about 2 years. I mean, as soon as I got SoundFlow, I started working on having it bounce my mixes. And so I got some really kind of dumb scripts that work with my session layout and find the bottom track and all that kind of stuff. And then it turned into this probably about, I don't know, 18 months ago. And then it went into beta test about 6 months ago. And then as soon as it came out, immediately there was a bunch of stuff. Like everyone who had tested it was working on an English language operating system. Like, it never occurred to me I needed to get some French dudes working on it. So then that was like a week of scrambling, because obviously it doesn't say okay in any of the dialogues. Like, so there's been stuff like that since it came out, but it was terrifying to release it, but it's been remarkably stable. But I've got to say, probably 2/3 of the code is just to deal with stuff that could go wrong. The actual bouncing part is nothing, you know. It's all the dialogues when you open a session about missing plugins and missing audio, and do you want me to scan this? And like, it has to know what order those things come up and dismiss them, because otherwise you can't leave it alone.
Amazing stuff. A lot of hard work there.
Seriously.
And
Do you have any
so,
questions for Andrew?
yeah, any questions for Andrew?
Yeah, I got a question. Can this work in, how many DAWs does it work in, or just in Pro Tools, or?
It's just Pro Tools, and it's just Mac right now. It's just Mac because SoundFlow is just Mac, and it's built on top of that engine. And it's just Pro Tools because I don't know any of these other programs well enough to actually build something like this. Like, I don't know how you bounce mixes in Logic. So there's talk of, you know, I think if enough people want it, that sort of engine behind it would be not completely portable, because a lot of it is Pro Tools specific, but it could happen. But at the moment, it's Pro Tools and Mac.
Cool.
You smart.
I've had a lot of time on my hands, man. I haven't left the house in 2.5 years.
That's remarkable, man. Seriously. I mean, it's I saw the video. We posted it. We have a Tech Breakfast web page on Facebook, and we posted it, and a lot of people were commenting on it, but I didn't know that it did all of the things that you just showed us. So that's,
yeah, if you go to bouncefactory.net, there are 7 or 8 videos now of like in depth. Here's how you would bounce a session. Here's how it opens and closes stuff. Here's how you import and export the mix passes and all that kind of thing. So yeah, so because I just knew, I started like trying to write a manual or do walkthroughs, and it was just ridiculous. So I just had to like do videos of me doing it. And I think what's obviously, there's some workflows that it may not be completely ideal for, but like there's a guy using it who mixes on a console with using the console automation. And the only thing we had to do was have him start printing timecode onto a track in Pro Tools, because then you can use the bounce dialog and bounce online. And it runs in real time, and the timecode goes slamming out of an output, runs the SSL, done. So there are very few workflows you can't adapt it to.
it's tremendous. It's exceptionally powerful. Like I said,
You can, if you go to that SoundFlow link, both the Bounce Factory and SoundFlow have links up in the chat there. If you go to the soundflow.org site, you'll see there's a whole community of people out there that are building these things. And there's one I downloaded, JavaScripting, for one that actually sets up all your sends, names them, routes them wherever they need to go for effects. It's pretty crazy stuff, you know. And
Yeah,
is there a time limitation on sessions? Like,
how do you mean?
well, like if you're recording for 2
1
days
hour or 2 hours,
or a movie or something, like 4 hours or something.
No, it's fine. It's absolutely fine. And there's some people who are using it who are mixing live concerts. So they'll be bouncing ADMs of the entire concert and then going back and taking a snapshot for each song to bounce individual ADMs and then bounce stereo. And yeah, no, it just sits there waiting. As long as that progress dialog is on the screen, it's just hanging out, waiting for that to finish.
Good for you.
Excellent. What are you
It
doing with all your
says,
spare time now?
that an ADM is an antidepressant medication.
Yeah.
No, I'm
that's what
sorry.
it is.
It'll bounce those.
I'm sorry for my ignorance.
Oh, sorry, the Dolby Atmos ADM. It's that multi-channel wave file that you get out of the renderer. But you can bounce those internally inside of Pro Tools now, which is awesome. You don't have to bounce real time in the renderer. So it'll bounce those offline. And that's exactly how I do it. There's nothing worse to me than sitting there watching Pro Tools record what you've already done. So that's what this is about. But yeah, it works fine. And it's, I'm trying to think if there's anything like it that really trips it up or it doesn't do. But I think basically if you can use the bounce dialog to bounce your mixes, it will absolutely do it. And it's also compatible with every format that Pro Tools can bounce. And because I'm beta testing Pro Tools, usually day 0 on the new releases, it'll support whatever they do. Like when they redid the bounce window, I had to spend 3 weeks rewriting everything because they completely changed the bounce window. But that's fine because, you know, it's got to work. So the compatibility on it's pretty good.
Are you coming to NAM?
I'm not. I was going to, and then there's still a plague and it's going to be really, really, really hot. So I'm not, unfortunately. I'm definitely planning on going to AES in October, though. I think that's going to be my first, probably my first plane flight since the before times.
Cool.
Where the dark times descended.
Yeah.
Anybody else got some questions for Andrew? It's really powerful, dude. Seriously. Paul, did you have a question?
I'm amazed by that. That's amazing. It's like suicide prevention.
Yeah. It is, especially because the thing that sucks even more than printing them is having to reprint them because they want the hi-hat turned up, and you know, you can't say no. And well, you can, but and also I think the biggest thing for me was realizing, like, I was always very, very anti-stems. Like, well, what do you need them for? How do you know you're even going to get the right stems? Like, bouncing stems to me was just the devil's work. But now that I'm actually mixing in Atmos, I make stems of my own mixes. Even if I've done the stereo mix, I will make stems of that and then mix that in Atmos. And you need 20 to 30 stems per song.
Jeez.
You have to have them. Otherwise, you really can't dig in and do all the stuff you want to do. And I wanted to kill myself making stems of my own mixes. And so that was really the impetus. You know, it was to save myself from myself. And fortunately, it seems to be helping other people too. But it really is about that.
Well, you're the guy that gets dinner too, because the guy that has to stay back and do all that stuff doesn't get to eat. Well, everybody else goes off to eat.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And you know, it's the kind of thing where if you can afford to have an assistant do it, that's great. But it's also, there's that really weirdly, like 5 seconds of meticulousness getting the next mix pass set up, followed by 5.5 minutes of absolute boredom, and your mind wanders and you don't even remember which version you just printed. And to be able to get all of that concentration at once to set up the whole record has turned out to me I make many, many fewer mistakes. I used to make mistakes all the time. And I get a phone call like, man, the bass stem has drums on it. Like, great. And you'd go and reprint that. And it's really cut down on that too, because it becomes just a really focused part of the workflow instead of this like little burst in between printing.
So these are all offline bounces or real time?
However you work, whichever you want to do. Yeah, if you're using outboard gear and hardware inserts, you can bounce real time, no problem.
That's what I would probably do.
How much is it, Andrew?
Well, this is where everybody gets really angry. It's a subscription because I spend my entire life working on it. And it was also the kind of thing where if you talk to music guys, they would say, yeah, man, I'd pay $20 for that. And then you talk to a post guy and they say, man, I'd pay $5,000 for that. And there's nowhere in the middle. And so I went with a subscription, and there are 2 tiers for it. There's a basic tier, which does everything you just saw, but you can only bounce 1 session at a time. It won't open and close the sessions, and it won't text you after every mix pass. And then the pro tier will open and close sessions. I mean, you can bounce, I think the most I've ever bounced in one go is like 278 stems over about a day and a half. And it did the whole record, and it texted me, so I knew what was going on. And it's either $19 a month or $199 a year for the basic, or $49 and $499 for the pro. And there's a 30-day trial. And I know that sounds like a hell of a lot of money when you first hear it, but the first time you use it, it's going to take a minute. But when you get to the second record, it literally is like someone walking into the studio and saying, go home, I'll do it. I would give that guy $50 every single time. And so people, I don't know, I don't want to talk about the process of coming up with the pricing, but that seemed to be what worked. And, if it's not for you, it's not for you. And that's totally fine. I'm not going to pretend like everybody on the planet can use this.
And
and
Andrew,
be
this
happy
will
with it,
this
but-
will run on the basic version of SoundFlow. The was it $9.99 a month
Yep.
subscription?
Yeah, that's the Cloud Pro or
Yeah,
whatever that's
Cloud
called.
Pro.
Yeah, exactly.
And yeah, so SoundFlow is subscription as well. And
Yeah.
like he was saying, it's the editor, if you will. So if you wanted to make your own macros, you can do it, go in there, or tweak a macro. And it comes, by the way, not to sell them, but it comes with a whole bunch of Pro Tools macros, lots of them, like 900 or something.
Yeah, and there's a lot of amazing free stuff in the store as well. I mean, there's a store for where people have built stuff, but very few of the things are actually paid. Most of it's free, and there are hundreds and hundreds of really great time-saving things on there.
I already have it set so I can click a button on the phone and it'll open my mail program and get my mail, stuff like that you don't even have to sit down at the computer.
Yeah, and it will automate anything. Like
Yeah.
I've got, there's a free package that I put up that will take a folder full of ADMs, open them up in the Dolby Renderer, and export MP4s and binaurals.
There you
So
go.
you don't have to go through and do that manually after you print a whole album's worth. So there's tons of stuff like that.
Fantastic.
I can
Fantastic.
push a button on my phone and get my mail without doing anything.
Well, I only offered that because I also have one that goes into Pro Tools and checks the hardware setup, or goes into
Well, that's different.
that stuff, but it goes and scrolls down to the file, finds it, and changes it. So I'm just getting started with it. Andrew's like, he's on Mars compared to where I'm at.
You can also use this to control other macro programs. So I have it set up for, as an icon, just push a button to control things that I already had in Keyboard Maestro. What is that called? So other macro programs that you have, you can use this on top as another layer. Very fast, very cool.
I was going to say, this is kind of a kindergarten question. So how is this the same or different from Keyboard Maestro, even though I know the macro itself is?
Well, SoundFlow, so Bounce Factory aside, just the difference between SoundFlow and Keyboard Maestro. Keyboard Maestro is really powerful, and I think there may even be a couple of things it does that SoundFlow doesn't do. But what SoundFlow has, because it was built by a Christian who built it, is a film editor. And for a sound editor for film, and he works on movies. So he built it for himself. And so that's why it's so powerful with Pro Tools. It has,
I think, or an alternative that does the same thing as Keyboard Maestro, right?
It will cover just about anything Keyboard Maestro will do. And then especially when you're talking to Pro Tools, it'll do way more, way more.
Got a built-in bias towards it. They've seen it in life before.
Yeah, but also, like you were saying, if you've got a bunch of stuff already built in Keyboard Maestro, you don't have to get rid of it. They can run alongside each other, and you can even use one to trigger the other if that's, if that makes more sense.
One of the bigger pluses too is not having to remember all of the key commands in Keyboard Maestro or another program that you have running that has macros. You can use this and just have pictures of, I've done custom icons on my iPad that allows me to very quickly push a button without having to remember a key combination.
That's what I'm liking about it.
Yeah, it's very good.
And it can show up on your iPhone, or you can buy a Stream Deck. I don't know if you have a Stream Deck.
Yep.
Yeah, the Stream Decks are awesome, but you do virtual Stream Decks on any Android or iOS device too. Just build your own buttons to do stuff, and every button has an icon. And
Stream Deck's like a little tablet. It's like $150, and I think
I don't know if I can get mine up to the.
There you go. Oh, that's a nice one. That's a nice.
And so that's all SoundFlow macros. Every single button on there, and then there are pages and pages of them. So session prep for color coding and making groups and blah blah blah. But I mean, just things like everything I do that I have to do 4 or 5 times in a row, and then I get angry, I'll just stop and write a macro to do it. So I've got a macro that imports tracks from my template, and it knows whether it's stereo or Atmos. Like, that's not that big a deal, but to go through that import session dialog and select all the tracks that you actually want each time, it just drives you crazy when you're doing 12 songs in a row. So all that stuff just disappears. It's pretty spectacular.
That's why I'm learning SoundFlow. Get out my old rusty JavaScripting chop, I'll say, not chops, chop, and see if I can get fancy.
Wow. Anybody else got any questions for Andrew?
Andrew, hey man, it's Alex.
Hey Alex.
Good to see you. How do you balance your time between software development, product development, and creating music?
I mix till my brain hurts and then I start coding. It's ridiculous. It's been like a second full-time job because I've stopped going to the pub. And so I've got all this time on my hands, and it did turn into that. It's such a different side of my brain that I can sit there and code until 2 a.m. when by 8 o'clock at night, I'm useless for mixing, and vice versa, depending on which one I start the day with. So each one is just a break from the other. And I'm a geek.
You ever run into Peter Gabriel much?
Not much. He's a little south of me.
Would you go out of your way to run into him?
I would. Yes. On a Segway even.
If anybody ever worked with George Massenburg, he used to do a lot of the same thing. He would mix until his brain would bleed, and then he would code, and he would write code for his automation. And that was his like relaxation time. That was for him, it was just this flow of consciousness going into the keyboard, and there was nobody to grade it, nobody to say it sounded good, nobody to say I need you to do that again. It was just this flow. So we'd all go to dinner and he'd code.
Yeah, and the best thing about code is no one can just say, no, I don't think I like it. Can you make it more like the early beta? Like it's great that it's not subjective. It either works or it doesn't.
Andrew.
Yes, sir.
Good to see you. I'm a Microsoft coder. That's how I buy all my music software. Sad to say, but that's why you have source control, so you can revert back to an earlier version or look how someone else did something. But a question for the group would be, how are you using Stream Deck? Because I'm planning on getting one. I just like to know how it integrates into workflows. Anybody in the group?
I mean, I'm using it to trigger SoundFlow stuff. So Stream Deck comes with its own native drivers, which you can use. And then they've got their own little ecosystem of people who've built decks to control different stuff. But I'm using the SoundFlow direct integration because there's a whole deck for controlling OBS. So if you do any kind of streaming, you can control that. You can control pretty much anything from SoundFlow. So I use SoundFlow to build decks on the Stream Deck, and it just gives me hardware buttons, which is great. I mean, I think from mixing on consoles for so many years, what a lot of us in the box miss isn't what you get out of a control surface where the button might do 25 different things depending on how the session is. It's the reaching to the left and hitting the button that you know where it is, and it always does the same thing.
Hallelujah.
And that's how I use the Stream Decks, is to set up like muscle memory stuff for all the things I do a lot.
That's great. Anybody else in the group have any comments about this Stream Deck outside of the software that Andrew is using or developed?
I'm getting one for SoundFlow and for Pro Tools. It's like $150. You don't have to tie up your iPhone, Not that the iPhone doesn't work great. It's just that you can just leave it on your desktop.
So how is it different, say, like than the Avid Yukon remote for iPad?
That's a whole nother thing. It just Screen Deck is just a separate thing.
But similar behavior. You can press a physical button to trigger a macro.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's it. Simple.
The beautiful thing about the Stream Deck is that it has an LCD screen. So instead of having to print a label and pull off a button and put it underneath, you can, as you shift pages, all the displays change.
Yep. That's right.
One more question, if that's okay for the group.
Hey, Andrew, Gary Lux here. I have a question for you. Do you do any of your stereo mixing inside of Atmos? In
No,
other words, you don't do that?
no, I don't. I mean, I have a feeling that's got to be coming, because I've gotten to the point now where sometimes it bums me out that I'm working in stereo, and sometimes it bums me out I'm working in Atmos, because I want to do something that I do in the other setup. But at the moment, for me, what happens is that I need to switch to mixing from stems, because otherwise all those sonic decisions, because the stereo is always signed off before you start the Atmos at this point. And it's just, I don't want the chaos of thinking I might screw something up that would keep them from approving. So sonically, the only way for me to make sure it's okay is to do them completely separately.
Yeah, I understand, because you've got to deal with the neurosis of all the record labels and all the types. And I think that's incredibly brilliant. But just to let you guys know, because, you know, I do so much Atmos mixing, mixing stereo, listening in Atmos and listening to the fold down will blow you guys away. It's an amazing sounding thing. I haven't thought about doing all the stem stuff because I haven't had to do that. I make the Atmos mix, it goes out and that's it. But again, for stereo mixing, done a lot of, you know, work with that. It sounds amazing in Atmos, listening to the stereo fold. You can bounce kind of back and forth from Atmos to stereo. And once you feel that you're right there, you switch to objects, and your stereo mix will be amazing. So there.
Go there.
Gary, is that over speakers or headphones?
This is all speakers. It's both.
And so what's technically happening that causes that transformation that you're describing?
So, you know, where you're using the renderer, you're going through, I have two Mac minis. And so, you know, we're mixing in Atmos, but we're listening in stereo. And so, you know, even though you're putting something, you know, in the back that you think you would do in Atmos, it still translates to a stereo, you know, fold down. So the sonics of the renderer are really compelling, you know, in stereo. I've taken stereo mixes, take the stereo mix, just run it through the renderer, A/B them and listen to them. You guys will be amazed. It's worth it. It's worth, you know, listening to. Plus for Andrew, again, you know, that, you know, I can, it's easier for me to do the stereo mix. I don't have to do the stem kind of stuff. So being in Atmos, you know, we're ready. It was easy when we did 5.1 mixes, because the 5.1 mix was a flat file and we just put everything to the left, right, and then you open it back up and you can just spread it around again. It's a little different for Atmos for sure, but it's worth you guys trying listening to stereo mixes through Atmos.
Awesome. Tony, you want to put the end cap? We're kind of out of time. We try to keep these to about an hour. But gosh, thanks so much to both Andrew and Kurt today. It's awesome. Probably one of the best.
And if you guys have any questions for them, you know, hit us up and we'll get you answers. We're going to try and put some of the stuff up on the Tech Breakfast Facebook page. So look for it there.
Tony will edit the video a little bit, and
we'll get it up there for you guys.
We'll get it up there ASAP. So
great. And there's 30-day trial for both SoundFlow and Bounce Factory.
Right.
So you can just go mess with it for a month. Right. And if you have any questions, the forums on the SoundFlow site are great and super active.
They are. I've been relying on them, you know, because it is learning SoundFlow for me is a little frustrating, the way that the thing works, the way the GUI works, because you're used to more, you know, other things. So, but it's been great. Thanks so much, Andrew. What time
Thanks,
is it?
Andrew.
About 10 o'clock.
Thanks for having me. Great to see you guys.
Yeah.
Great seeing you. If you have any stuff in particular or any stuff that you want us to post about the product, let us know.
Okay, I mean, I think the bouncefactory.net's got stuff, but if there's anything in particular you want too, just let me know.
Okay.
Great.
Coolio, y'all. Thanks for coming to Tech Breakfast, guys. We love it, and we appreciate you all coming
Guys,
out.
remember on the lower right-hand corner of the chat, you can push that hamburger and save the chat. It'll save all the
Right.
Um,